What's good, y'all, and welcome to the basics of Abyss 1. We'll be going over 3 thematics, and that is number 1, the loot. So when should you take these chests? What are you expected to do to get each of these chests? Are they worthy? And also, what can you get out of them? Secondly, we'll be going over the mechanics, super simplified, because there's a lot of things happening on the screen. I'll exactly break it down for you. What does what attack do and which ones are the scary ones? And then lastly, we're going to be going over gear requirements, or better said, the way you want to gear your units, because the specific units and team compositions and such we'll be going over in a video tomorrow, specifically more of like a team, more like a tier list format, and probably a separate like team building video. And yeah, that's the plan for today. So let's start with loot. And what better way to start with loot than with a 60k chest? So this is a 60k chest, but the Abyss one didn't die on this guild yesterday, which means you're going to see the highest possible chest on 60 million. Let's see what we can get. So Abyss 1 mythic chest, we're getting apparently a divine as well as a 5-star psychic power overall, just 4 items, and that's already it. That brings us to number 1, the biggest point. Don't do Saurian Grimscale if you're necessarily caring about the most efficient with your being the most efficient with your rewards. So you can play it on a test fight, you can have some fun, but if you really want the most rewards, still stick with Nightmare 3 and Nightmare 4 until a very important condition, and that is that your guild manages to kill Abyss 1. So now that we know that unless your guild kills the Drake, it is really not worth your time. Before we even get into specifics of the loot, how much blood do you even need to defeat this boss? How much blood does every single member of your guild need to do if you want to down it? And yeah, here we have an example run of 5.21% at 31,000. If you calculate it down, you come out to 1% equals 6,000 blood, which means simplified 600,000 blood equals you killing Saurian Grimscale. 600,000 blood divided by 30 guild members means every single one of your guild members has to do 20,000 blood, or overall your guild's average has to be 20,000 blood per member, which is around 10% below the third chest. Yeah, that is not something that's going to happen anytime soon, unless we're talking maybe the top 5, maybe the top 10 guilds on global might be able to pull together 600,000 blood, and we're obviously talking about one attempt, because if you're doing 2 attempts to get a chest, even then it's still not worth it. So now for those of you curious, okay, how can I judge how much blood can I get? What are kind of like the milestones I should be looking for? We have the shields as well as the required damage amount, and here we have the loot. So if you want to get yourself the 5k blood chest, you need to be able to deal 10 million damage to the first physical shield. That is your minimum requirement, otherwise you're not going to get the 5k chest. Yes, you can get 5k before that shield even starts, but that's if you have gear that is out of this world and you don't really need this advice. So we're going to stay with like reasonable scenarios, not everything A5, and you can already reach way higher. So after that, if you want to get the 12k chest, then you're going to have to be breaking the second physical shield. So overall you need 10 million physical, 10 million magical, followed by 27 physical. That's how you can get over 12k, and that's how you get yourself the 12k chest. Now for the 22k chest, you only have to break the second magical shield. So you need a team that can simultaneously do 27 million physical, 27 million magical damage to get yourself the 22k chest. Unless in extreme cases you might be able to get to 22k before having to break the second magical shield. Now, interestingly enough, if you can break the second physical and the second magical at high enough damage while playing to the best of your ability, you are going to be able to get to 35k before having to break the physical shield. But that is more of like a perfect weird case. If you want to reliably be able to get the 35k chest, that means you have to reliably break a 60 million damage physical shield. And this is basically the highest shield I've seen yet. And after that, you would obviously have to break the 60 million magical shield, but that is still not going to allow you to get to 60k. Overall, the highest score I've ever seen on Abyss 1 was yesterday, and that was 45,000 blood. And that 45,000 blood, I'm a bit indecisive, but I'm fairly certain that 45,000 blood meant that that guy was able to break the 60 million physical shield, but faulted on the 60 million magical one. Now you kind of see here a bit of a pattern, which is it's 12 million and then you double it to 24 million and you add 3 million, giving you a 27 million shield. Now the next shield was doubling it to 54 million and then adding 2 times 3 million, giving you a 60 million shield, which means, at least my current conjecture is that the fourth physical and magical shield should be doubling it to 120 million and then adding 3 sets of 3 million, giving you a 129 million shield. And then if there is such a thing like a Fizz 5 or Fizz 5 magical shield, then that shield should, in theory, if everything stays the same with the current like pattern, should be a 270 million damage shield, or 10 times the amount that you need to break in order to get past physical 2 and magical 2. But obviously these two shield numbers, the 129 million and the 270 million, obviously aren't really confirmed. So yeah, that's how you get your blood, and that's the shield. But let's quickly go over the loot, and right here you'll notice that from the beginning, even if you just get the 5k chest, you would be in contention for a soulstone. Biggest issue with that is in Nightmare 3 at 18k, you are also in contention for a soulstone, right? You also have the ability to get a soulstone, and you're going to get 2 chests most of the time from Nightmare 3 rather than just a single one from Abyss. On the other hand, there's a couple new additions to the loot pool, which are Sanguine Fabrics, this random Demon Soldier chest, as well as the random Mythic Gear chest. The biggest issue I see with the random Mythic Gear chest is number 1, the fact that it's tier 2 gear, and number 2 is the fact that it's just a mythic piece. It could be trash. It's not an ancient. On the other hand, these basic currencies and all that stuff is higher than Nightmare 2. If you were to look at the loot pool from the highest chest, you're going to notice that, oh, it's 5 here, and it's like 30,000, it's 30,000, it's more XP. But you're also getting half the chests. So overall, it just evens out. But once again, 2 attempts, always preferable, comparable to 3. So at which point should you really swap? Honestly, as soon as your guild can down Abyss 1, whenever that happens, even a 5k chest would be a worthy swap. Biggest problem with that is you need an average of 20k, so you with your 5k chest are probably not really going to be in a situation like that. So yeah, for the furthest part, Abyss 1 at the moment is more of a gear slash hero show off rather than a proper way to get some extra loot. So that is pretty much Abyss 1 loot. Now let's go over this book of abilities with a simple example fight and how every ability affects you. Alright, so we have our trusty notepad on what all of these abilities actually do. We can quickly go into an auto fight, and then as soon as we get to these abilities, we can obviously talk a bit about them. So overall, you've seen there was already like a small AoE push, which just means that there's a bit of AoE damage happening, but it's nothing you should really worry about. And then we get to Drake's Bellow. So Drake's Bellow, pretty much the higher your HP, the more damage it does, and the less HP you have, the less damage it does. You're going to end up at around 20% from full health, so it does around 80% damage. And then after that, it inflicts Burning Corrosion. So there's nothing you can do against Burning Corrosion, but what it does is it adds basically a damage over time that just starts ticking and ticking and ticking. So what depending on your heroes, in the first phase it's not that bad, in the second phase it's still manageable, but from the third phase on you kind of are going to have to rely on using a healer to use a ultimate to counteract it. Like for example, as soon as the Drake's Bellow happens, you could ult with Fercy, restoring those HP that you're losing after it, and then the tick damage isn't going to kill you. But overall, Drake's Bellow is like one of the less scary abilities. Now we get to Storm Surge. Now, what Storm Surge does is, and I mean, I guess I can play it once just so you can see it. Is he's going to smash the ground, and he smashes the ground and stuns your units for 3 seconds. For those of you that in recent times have played the Esotericist faction trial, you're kind of going to notice the same pattern, and that is obviously while they're stunned, there can't be any basic attacks, which means your healers are out for the count when it comes to keeping your units alive, which means that you need a source of healing active during that time, which isn't based on your units attacking. Like for example, you could trigger a Fercy ultimate before shock, but that's super hard to time. Or if you have an Elowin in, you could activate Elowin's ultimate, because Elowin's ultimate is still going to proc while your units are stunned. Or you have to prepare something that as soon as the stun ends, there's like a big influx of healing, stopping your units from basically getting eliminated. So Storm Surge is like one of these points where you use a Wood Elf, where you use an ultimate. Storm Surge can really fuck you up. And then from a Storm Surge, it again goes back into Drake's Bellow. So you have to deal with it twice. And then you have Wyrm's Wrath, which is, I guess you could say, the ultimate ability of this boss. And in that ultimate ability, what he's going to do is he's going to do a bit Claw Strike. That Claw Strike legit does no damage. And then it follows up with the Meteorite that has the Annihilate tag. So what's going to happen is right here, he does the Claw Strike and he puts in this Meteor. This Meteor is going to target your highest max HP unit, pop into a couple of crystals. These crystals are going to fall to the ground and explode. If there are no units near to your tank, then your tank just dies. Insta-death. Game over. So, yeah, that's... So because of this like insta-death mechanic, if nobody is nearby, and the fact that it splits into big damage, the preferable strategy at the moment is just having a Kigiri next to your tank, and then with these meteors coming out and then exploding, just basically tanking them with Kigiri with either his ultimate by activating it and just deflecting these meteor explosions, or just tanking through them, because they don't really hit all that hard, and this isn't all that dangerous. But you have to have a unit next to your tank, in this case for example Torador, or they would just get deleted insta-death. And then you come to the shield. During the shield there's still going to be a couple of AoE pulses, but there isn't really much happening besides the fact that if you don't break the shield, it is just game over. So after the shield, the boss is obviously going to get stunned. He has again this vulnerability phase where if after the shield you still have a couple ultimates that are active and you hit the boss, you're going to get a higher score than usual. Which then obviously still here also allows you to hit, like for example you might be able to get off another Wukong ultimate or something. And then as soon as he starts with this blue wave here, and then he starts roaring, and it says Dragon is going to get promoted, even though his color is still purple, which means physical damage does maximum amount of damage. The phase swap effect is already there, so do not use any ultimates against this boss from the physical side, because they're still only going to be doing 10 damage, because the physical resistance is already there. And yeah, and then Dragon is going to get promoted into the other phase, where all of a sudden all your physical damage dealers are now basically useless, which brings us into the physic resistance phase called Nightmare's Revenge. Apparently we've just hurt the guild boss's feelings, and now all of a sudden he's back for more. So Drake's Bellow, we've already seen it. It is exactly the same as before, again around 80% HP cut. As you can see right here, it's like a bit dependent, but it's between like a 60 to 80% HP cut, obviously also getting higher the further phases you go in. And then like a whole lot of tick damage, so you kind of really want to use something to prevent it. Like for example, we used a Fercy ultimate here. And then Seismic Slam. So Seismic Slam is again new. Seismic Slam is pretty much just 3 big ground slams with high ground damage and then some shockwaves that do a bit of platform damage. But overall, it is one of the less dangerous abilities, though, especially once you get past the first magic shield, so into like the second physical phase and then a second magical phase. They can already start to hurt, and this might be already again the time where you want to trigger another healer ultimate, preferably a longer lasting one, because after the Seismic Slam, you're going to go into another Drake's Bellow, kind of the same with the other phase, and doing Drake's Bellow again, HP reduction, bit of burns, bit of true damage, reduced healing overall. And that's why, like for example, something like an Eloin ultimate triggered shortly before Seismic Surge starts can last throughout Drake's Bellow and pretty much heal both phases. Now, again, the big ultimate of this phase is going to be Meteoric Deluge, and what Meteoric Deluge does is, once again, you target the highest HP unit, which in this case is Torador, and then the adjacent 8 tiles around are again going to take increased physical damage. And basically the solution here is, once more, for example, someone like Kigiri, where you're then going to go activate his ultimate, making him invulnerable throughout his dashes, blocking one of the meteors. Or what also works, if you don't have a Kigiri, you can use a Salazar to activate his ultimate and to just dodge the meteors, and then you survive, right? Obviously your tank should by all means be able to survive these meteors pretty much naturally. Then again, you land in this phase where it's increased damage taken after the shield is gone. Once the shield is gone, again, same phase, boss, and then Dragon is going to get promoted, and then you're done, right? If you need like the notes, right, you can take a screenshot or something, but this is like the broken down easy version, and from there on it's just going to be the same thing over and over again, but every time the boss is transforming, the boss is going to get more attack and more penetration, so your units are going to take more and more damage. Yeah. So now for the last part of gearing, we have 4 distinct things, and that is your tank, your ground DPS, your platform healer, and your platform DPS, obviously with Constance being a bit of a weirdo, being a ground platform unit as in Inspiration. But let's go over how you build each of these characters, what are the preferred sets, and that is pretty much it. So, starting off with your tank, you're going to want to give him as much HP as possible, so subset wise, right side HP, left side either Life Force, Immortal Guardian, or then the tier 3 version of Ancient Ancestral Guardian. And then if you can afford it, the best thing you could do would be either a Invigoration or Wings of Grace based tank set. If your tank is strong enough, then putting a Wings of Grace on him is the best case scenario, because you can boost one of your tanks further by again increasing their attack by either 10 or 12% depending on the set. So a tank is honestly straightforward. He doesn't really need to do a whole lot, and artifact wise, whatever really suits you, because a Bastion Ring, it only increases the physical magical reduction by a block, so something like a Regal Quest, potentially an extra source of healing, work out fine. Or if your tank is based on defense, obviously going with full defense and then a Goddess Grace can also get the job done. Now, let's go on to DPS. So DPS set-wise, you have 3 options really, and those 3 options include Cataclysm, Infernal Roar, Sorbonne Arcana. Now, I don't have a full confirmation yet because I haven't really tested it, but it seems like that Cataclysm might be underrated as a set, and on certain characters, maybe in certain conditions, seems to have the ability to outperform a Sorbonne Arcana set, which is, if you have a really top tier set, do consider using a Cataclysm set, it might surprise you. But overall, Sorbonne Arcana is still the king, and then you kind of have like Cataclysm as well as Infernal Roar. On the left side, it is decently easy, and that is you either use Warlord or you use Wicked Vengeance. Warlord for either the attack speed and the attack, or Wicked Vengeance for the attack and the crit damage. Arguably, Wicked Vengeance is by far the very best set, because not only can it roll absolutely disgusting stats if you were to get it from the forge, like for example a chest piece like this. This is just something you can't find anywhere else. Pretty much the same is actually true for the weapon. A weapon like this you can't really find anywhere else unless you're talking about this one. Unless you're talking about Wicked Vengeance. And then stat-wise, it is actually super simple. Unless you are a fighter with really high attack or inbuilt penetration, it is almost the same as Guild Boss 2. Try to get as much attack as possible going. One of these units that can be run with an extra piece of crit damage would be someone like a Kigiri. Already has ridiculously high attack, has some defense ignore built into their kit, and yeah, maybe even a Wukong. But yeah, anything that's not a fighter, anything that only has like a base attack of between like 3000 and like 4500, slap on full attack on those. And then if you can afford it, Wicked Vengeance on this side right here, or Warlord if you don't have Wicked Vengeance at hand. That is how you build your tanks, how you build your DPS. It's actually super simple, and it's still kind of the same Guild Boss 2 mentality. At least that's what we have to do with the current units and the current difficulty of the fight, you could say. Which kind of brings us to our healers. Now this healer build obviously isn't perfect, but whatever set you have, preferably you want a set that helps your healer. Like for example, increasing the healing effect, increasing HP, increasing anything that helps your healer heal more. And then kind of like the end game approach is having a set like this. Having your healer in a Wings of Grace set, allowing them to support another DPS, giving them 12% attack, as well as HP threshold wise, I would really advise you to go with a minimum of around 25,000, and that's already cutting it very low, and preferably something more like 28, but realistically, if you have the pieces, something like 35,000 HP. Because your platform units do end up in this fight in like most of the squishy situations, especially in like the earlier phases. Really, if you don't have a Furcy, go for like 35 to 42k HP. If you don't have a Furcy, just crank those HP numbers up higher and really higher. That's the only thing you can really do. Platformers in general are more susceptible to dying because their base HP in general is lower, and also the amount of damage they take tends to be slightly higher. So instead of, for example, going for like perfect 4-stat pieces like this, it might be advised to introduce 1 or 2 pieces that have HP percent as a subset, allowing your DPS to survive longer. And then on the other hand, what is the last unit we really have to talk about? I mean, all supports do kind of end up being built the same, but it depends on what kind of gear you have, right? If you could search for something, obviously something like this would be like a perfect DR piece. I mean, you could scratch the rage region with like the extra HP, but yeah, you really want high HP, and then obviously for supports, it is as much attack speed, main stat, and healing effect as you can reasonably combine, because that's the only thing that they're really doing here. So yeah, that's kind of like the HP thresholds. That's the thresholds you want to hit. And yeah, that's pretty much already everything that you really have to know about gearing. It's really just bring your top tier stuff, bring your best awakenings, go in, see how many shields you can break, and then either be happy or wait for them to hopefully give us, I don't know, level 70, so 7 stars, maybe give everyone another talent, or potentially yeah, what else could they do? Huh? Where's a, I don't know, here, huh? Give us a helmet, give us some boots, give us something down here, maybe, I don't know, Fate Stone or something. So yeah, there's stuff that is needed, because I don't see us breaking 60 million even with just the introduction of a hero, because that hero would have to be so good, he would be like twice a Wukong, and that's just not realistic. So I don't know, I would say expect more gear. Like, that has to be the solution, hopefully, and if not, we're all fucked in the end, and we see each other in the next one. Peace.